time.
Welcome aboard. Glad I'm here. Glad you're here. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. Special guest, the author of many, many New York Times bestsellers, a great columnist who has written now about anchor babies in the illegal immigration debate. She is Ann Coulter. She joins us on the Newsline. Hello, Ann.
Hello, RogerHedgecock.
How are you?
Fine, thanks. How are you?
Well, we're in a country bar having a good time.
I wish I were there.
Stoney's North 40 in Las Vegas. Actually, we're out here. Of course, Sharon Angle's going to be on the show a little bit later. We're going to talk about that race between Reed and Angle. But before we get there, I wanted you to talk about, because I have never seen this so well stated, that this business that the 14th Amendment requires us to recognize that the babies of illegal immigrants in this country are U.S. citizens. You take the opposite position. Tell us why.
Yes, I suspected it had to be true, just knowing the history of the 14th Amendment. You know, it was after the Civil War, and still, you know, having 600,000 men died to prove the principle that all men are created equal, and still you had these Democrats in southern states who were refusing to accord freed slaves the full rights of citizenship. I mean, it's a big deal to pass a constitutional amendment. And the country was furious about this. That was the impetus for the amendment. For one thing, I was sort of surprised that they were even thinking about extending it to whether it would be extended to anyone who happens to be born here. And the answer given by the author of the amendment, Senator Jacob Howard of Michigan, he wrote that first clause, was no. And in fact, one of the things that the amendment refers to is that you become a citizen of the state in which he resides, is the language. So, you know, they're obviously talking about adults. This was to give rights to slaves who had been brought here involuntarily, in chains, the children thereof, born in America, grown to full adults, but not being treated like citizens. Illegal immigration wasn't a problem then. And so no one, by and large, people weren't thinking about it. But, you know, slowly the Supreme Court considered other cases, giving citizenship rights to the children of legal immigrants. That was about 20 years after the amendment was passed, though not at first. And who were employed lawfully. That was a Chinese man who had been born here. His parents were living here illegally, brought up here. As an adult, he goes to visit his parents in China. He's never lived in China. He's never lived any place but America. He was born here with two legal parents, and when he came back, he couldn't get back in. And in that case, the Supreme Court said, no, if your parents were here legally and lawfully employed, yes, then you're a citizen. The first time illegal immigrants were mentioned was in dicta, which is to say it wasn't a court ruling. It remains not a court ruling. In footnote 10 of an opinion Justice Brennan wrote in 1982, in which he just blithely asserts, well, the difference between a child of an illegal immigrant and a legal immigrant, really there's no plausible distinction. Well, I can think of a lot of plausible distinctions.
Yeah, and this is what we get for not having judges who will go back to the original intent of these amendments, as you did. You went back and got the author of the 14th Amendment. We're talking about the mid-1860s, right?
That's right. I mean, after the Civil War. I mean,
sure.
There were a lot of Civil War, post-Civil War amendments to force, as I say, Democrats in the southern states to live up to their loss in the war.
And here's the quote in your column. The Civil War author, or the Civil War era author of the 14th Amendment, saying that he had no intention of conferring citizenship on these children of aliens who happen to be born in the U.S. And it's Senator Jacob Howard of Michigan. Quote, "This will not, of course, include persons born in the United States who are foreigners, aliens, who belong to the families of ambassadors or foreign ministers." Unquote. In other words, he's very careful about what this applies to. And as you say, it was a post-Civil War liberation for slaves to be full American citizens, having nothing to do with people illegally coming into this country.
Right. Certainly not to illegals. They weren't even thinking about immigrants. We weren't a massive welfare state attracting people with a free money sign at the border back then. People who immigrated to America, you know, they sank or swam, and if they couldn't make it in America, they'd go home. One interesting fact is, this is from, I think, Peter Brimelow's book, Alien Nation. at least 30, it may be 40% of Italian immigrants who came here soon after the 14th Amendment went back again. Because they couldn't make it here in America, and I know Italian Americans, or Americans of Italian descent, I should say, are our best Americans today, and I hope one of them will be our future presidential nominee, Chris Christie of New Jersey. But yeah, this is how, I mean, who has done more to wreck America than William Brennan by slipping in these little footnotes? And again, it wasn't part of the ruling of the case. So he just slips it in, footnote 10, in Plyler v. Doe, I think the case was in 1982, and suddenly, whenever, as I point out in the column, whenever you hear liberals screaming about, the ancient nature of some mysterious constitutional right, your antenna should go up. It usually means it was invented in the 70s or 80s.
Now, we just have a minute or so left, but Ann, I wanted to get your reaction then to Senators McCain and I think it's Coburn, who were talking about amending the 14th Amendment. Based on your analysis, it doesn't sound like we need an amendment. It sounds like we need the court to clarify that this footnote, in an otherwise unrelated way to the decision of Plyler itself, this footnote should not be controlling our national policy.
Right. I think legislation legally ought to be enough to correct it, particularly given what a problem it is now. But also given what a problem it is now, I mean, it takes time to pass a constitutional amendment, but I definitely think you have to move in that direction. It's insanity. I mean, as I described in the column, and people I'm sure have read in many other places, in Southern California, in various hospitals, 70%, sometimes 80% of the babies born are being born to illegal immigrants who have just run across the border and immediately sign up for welfare. There's an article that I just linked to on my webpage, AnnCoulter.com, in the New York Times, of all places. It's from the weekend when they expect no one to be reading the Times, I think, pointing out what I knew had to be true. The people who are most upset about illegal immigration are recent legal immigrants.
Sure.
They played by
Absolutely.
the rules. They came here legally, often from Mexico, and who's competing with them for jobs and
Exactly right.
underselling them and giving them a bad name.
Ann Coulter, thanks for being with us. I appreciate it, as always. Ann Coulter, ladies and gentlemen.